Hello, and welcome to Property Matters, a weekly look at all matters property designed to be of interest to anyone who has an interest in property. And Property Matters is supported by Town and Country Property Auctions London and, of course, Fairview International Property Consultancy. Each week, we look at the property stories making the news and get you talking in the comment sections below. So please don't be shy. Get in touch via the comment section wherever you're watching us today. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so that you get notifications of when we go live. If you'd like to email us, propertymatterstv@gmail.com. Well, we did mention last week that Joe Joshi had been a little poorly. And the fact of the matter is, Joe is with us today, but still suffering a little, Joe. So tell us what's been going on.
Yes, good morning, everybody. I just wanted to share the COVID journey that I've actually had. In all honesty, for the last couple of years, I always felt that we'd got through under the radar, and somehow I'd managed to avoid or miss the curb of the dreaded COVID that was going around. But I can now tell you here and live that it's real and it's true, and didn't really realize that how much it sort of knocks you out for. I suppose my message to anyone today would be that just don't think you're invincible. I mean, I think I am, but obviously I wasn't. And so I just thought I'd let you know that, we're all human, and there are people out there that are probably not taking the precautions that don't help others. And so the only people that can help themselves are yourselves, as your family and your loved ones and dear ones. I can't even describe to you what this COVID has been all about. It's undescribable. It's not a flu. It's not a cold. It's exactly what it is. I suppose it's some sort of virus that has come to get everybody. And for a man who likes to talk a lot, as you can tell, my talk has been restricted somewhat. But nevertheless, I said to Paul, I'm not going to give up. I'm still coming in, annoying everybody on a Sunday morning to let them know that, this is what COVID does. And it is still a property matter. Why is it a property matter? Because it manifests at the home. You don't realize in what shape or form it is coming through that front door, be it through children, be it through work colleagues, whichever the route is. But you must obviously take the appropriate precautions. And that's my bit said for COVID. Having said that, I have to tell you that it hasn't managed to shut me up just yet totally. So I'm still here for the duration of today's program, and I'll annoy you as much as I can.
Yeah, it has to be said that we are socially distanced in that you are in a completely different location to me. Although we look like we're sat next to each other on the screen, we are actually in completely separate buildings, and you're in that building all on your own, aren't you?
Absolutely. I mean, nobody wants to be near me at this moment in time. They think I've got some sort of alert. No, I'm only joking. We are. We've always been in that thing, and that's a blessing in today's technology. But nevertheless, it's not so much the distancing about the people, because once you got it as a family or you got it as a unit, you're all in it together. But it's the others that you can't control. That's the bit that we can't deal with. We don't know. We don't know what their own personal agendas are. Some people say they don't want to have the protective. I mean, I've had double vaccine, so I thought we were all good to go, but really, it's not the case. And so all I can say is take all the appropriate precautions. Health is wealth.
Yes, and it's fair to say, Joe, that you've been flattened by this pretty much for almost, just over 3 weeks, in fact.
Yeah, I mean, it was it's like counting the markers on the wall, but 24 days and counting was too much for me to sort of think. I don't think I've actually ever had that much time out about anything, let alone like a common cold or something like that. So definitely took the wind out of my sails as far as that's concerned. But I suppose the only other good thing out of it, if you've got to turn all the bad things into some sort of good thing, is that, you know, I've shed a few pounds, which is obviously helpful. And my good look and charm is still there.
We
And
noticed that.
modesty doesn't go away and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, why am I going to change a habit over a lifetime?
Okay, well, we'll have a look at a couple of stories today. We'll give you an easy road back into this. We'll give you a couple of stories to talk about, but there are a couple of interesting things that we want to cover off. And this is the nature of the property market. You know, you think, oh, you do a niche show like a property show, but actually, there's always something about property in the news every single week. So you leave it too many weeks, you're in catch-up mode. But and it's kind of interesting that we start with this story about what do house hunters want most. And the COVID-19 crisis has forced many, of course, to reassess the way they live and work. Working from home may not be quite the new standard for everybody, but it's the new normal for a lot of people. And that looks set to be the same for the foreseeable future, particularly as we keep seeing, you know, new strains and so on. It doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon, the virus. So a new study suggests that this may be influencing, Joe, house hunters' priorities. And whilst the size of the property is still the most important factor for UK house buyers, and by that I in particularly mean the size of bedrooms, for example. But now the second most important thing is a high-speed internet connection. The second most important factor for UK house buyers, above, in fact, the number of bedrooms. Size of the property is the most important, then numbers of bedrooms coming on after that, which is a really interesting shift, and one that I must say, probably about a year ago on Property Matters, you actually predicted, so you'll be delighted to hear this. But interestingly, Joe, just to wrap up the point here, that a good broadband connection, and by that we mean 300 megabits per second, will add around 5,000, is now estimated, to the house price. Or if you've got something up to, like I have in some parts of London, a 1 gigabyte line, then that could add up to £10,000 to the property price. So your words have come true yet again.
Yeah, I hate being right.
No, you don't.
Being the pundit on the Property Matters that I am, but I know a few of our colleagues were laughing and smiling. That was wondering how many times I was going to mention broadband. I remember there was almost a wager out on you know what the odds were going to be in the number of times I was going to mention it. So I refrained from mentioning it. But the truth of it is that, you know, it's now come home to roost. Of course, you would have already heard it first on Property Matters over a year ago when I said that the value of homes will be affected by the quality and the quantity of the broadband that anyone could have and the services it would provide. And it wasn't just about, you know, the COVID or the fact that people were having to work from home. It's the whole world. If you actually stop, our entire world now evolves around internet, be it a smartphone in your hand or an iPad or whatever other gadget that you have, including things like turning the electrics off when you're sitting in New York, which is not something you do every day. And I know, Paul, you've been in Malibu and turned the electrics off when you're over there. But these are all gadgetry worlds that we've now come to as a norm. It's just something that, you know, is given. The scary part about it is, you know, what happens if there was a blackout? What happens if these things are... So there will be other things like my other favorite subject, solar panels and things, that will start to take over some of these things. But the quality and the quantity of the broadband is going to be, not just now, but in the future, paramount for many reasons. And those reasons are not just educational for our children, because most of them are now on smartphone or on iPads, but all our businesses. We started to move, our way of living changed through pandemic, and we wanted bigger accommodation, more spacious accommodation, more country feel, and have those all those things that we want, all of the above. But it had to be underpinned and underlined by broadband. And broadband is definitely going to be where it's going to make the changes. So if you can't have the appropriate speed and you don't get the appropriate coverage, you will need to make sure that when you're coming to sell your property or you're looking to get the best value, that you get the appropriate. It is back about 10, 15 years ago, people started to put down, schools in the area, for argument's sake. What schools are good in the area, or shopping malls, or people would put high street brands and say there is a Waitrose nearby, or a drive-through such and such. All of those were sell points to a potential buyer to say to them that if you come and live in this area and you buy this particular property, these are all your perks, these are the things. All of those perks are actually becoming lesser now than they are as much as the broadband, because every one of those other services that we put down actually are totally reliant on the quality and the quantity of the broadband. It's because people are starting doing shopping online. People have been doing everything else online. So they start thinking, well, actually, I don't need to be near Waitrose or near a Sainsbury's or whatever that was the perk. I now need to make sure that my kids have access, my husband has access, or my work allow people to do that. And it's not just the quality through travel, it's also the visionary quality, because so much communication is now happening through Zoom and through Team and through programs that we never thought will ever happen. People talk to each other on a FaceTime as if like it's just a normal thing. So I think you'll be quite shocked that what this broadband area is actually going to ultimately result. And you're absolutely right. It will affect house prices. It will affect saleability. And the reality of it is that there are going to be millions and millions of people out there telling you that they've got the best broadband. Now, I'm just going to give you one tip, and that is, do what they're supposed to do. I remember making this mistake once. I'm not going to say who and why and where, but somebody knocked on my door and said, we can offer you cheaper broadband, and we'll give you a cup of tea and a nice hot kettle warmer or something with it as well, and all that kind of gubbins that they came in. And I was probably in the wrong mood, and I signed the document and said, yeah, that's fine. Well, I tell you this for nothing to all of our viewers. It was the biggest mistake I ever made. First of all, it cost me twice as much. Secondly, the left and the right never spoke to each other. And what I really learned out of it all was that I should have left my broadband with BT, and I should leave my electric with the electric people, and I should leave my gas with the gas. Now, a lot of people, a lot of utility companies probably wouldn't like me to say that. But the truth is that what looks cheap ultimately is not cheap. You have to remember that all of these other companies buy their product from the main suppliers. And so it's just about bulk buying. But you as a person, forget about the amount of money you're saving. Time is money, and money is time. Now, if you save to yourself £50 a month or £100 a month, but then spent 3 years fighting in court and arguing about what was right and what was wrong, you'd probably look back and think, you know what, I wish I'd listened to what Joe Joshi had said. And I'm telling you this as a personal experience. I will look back, and I have ever since that day said to anybody, stick to the products that they are good at doing. And that way you'll have a very clear, plain sailing life. Yes, of course there are companies out there to make money. I understand that. We're in business to do that. But The utilities are supplied by the utilities. I can't change that. BT in this country control the telecoms. Everybody else buys it from them. It's that simple. I mean, yes, they might offer it cheaper, but eventually, I remember having a telephone system in our office, and on a Friday night at 5:25, the system went down. BT said it was nothing to do with us because we were okay. The other company was at home, and they said, "Oh, we can't talk." So they just start to blame each other, and the person that loses out is the customer. So my advice to you all is very simple: stick to the things. Broadband is going to make a huge difference. Understand it, look at it, and add value to your house, because that's my job. My job here today is to help you add value and get the best price for your home.
Well, this survey, Joe, looked at 294 estate agents across the UK. They said that the number one thing people looked at was the size of the property, 23%. Quality of the broadband was second, 20%. The number of bedrooms moved down to third place with 18%. The age of the property, 10%, and access to transport, 9%. And interestingly, up in Scotland and indeed in the southwest, the broadband actually ranked a lot higher. 38% of agents questioned said it was in the top 3 priority for buyers. And they suggest that actually the number one priority, particularly in Scotland, is for the broadband, even above the size of the bedroom. So it is interesting, isn't it, how this is all evolving? I mean, and actually, we have a precedent for this, don't we? Because if you remember back in the day when Channel 4 launched, a lot of people couldn't get Channel 4. So a lot of people used to ask, "Oh, can I get TV reception at the property? Am I in a valley? Can I get decent TV there?" And this was the same sort of thing as we had back then. So there is a precedent to that. But interestingly, back in the day, it was like, well, can I get 2 cars on the drive? Am I overlooked at the back? All of those don't seem to even feature in the top 5. So I suppose it's modern life progressing us forward, isn't it?
Undoubtedly, our demands and our wishes and wants are much, much different to what they used to be. However, what is underlined by all of that is that we still need the basic services that have got to be good, and be it electric, be it gas, be it broadband. Those are all things that we can't go away from. I'm just curious myself, and the pressure is on for everybody to go electric and go green and do all sorts of other things that we're supposed to do. And I'm just asking myself, how is that going to be? How much pressure can they put on all of electric before that something has to give? So we'll work on that one and see. But the reality of it is that the basics of life don't change. And everybody will need those. Those demands are going to be high and higher, I think.
Let's move on to another story that actually came out last week, which is the chronic lack of supply, which is blamed for pushing up prices in September, almost 12%. Can you believe this? Average price for property in the UK jumped by 11.8% in September to 269,945. This is data from the ONS, Office of National Statistics. They revealed that it was up from 10.2% on the annual rise seen in August, as the final phase of the stamp duty holiday ended, of course. On a monthly basis, house prices rose 2.5% in just the 1 month. So this is being underpinned, of course, by the lack of supply, as the article suggests. And this is something that's nothing new for us. Many people obviously predicting that the bank rate, particularly now that the monthly meeting, obviously they chose not to raise the rates last time out, but now since there's been another measure report on the inflation's gone to 4.2%, so that's put even more pressure on them for next time around. Most people seem to think it'll be in the new year after Christmas. And there's a suggestion that that's going to perhaps put the brakes on demand a little bit. But still, people are looking for that elusive house with maybe 2 or 3 bedrooms as opposed to a flat. And this is making the carrot just further away from those first-time buyers. And the point I wanted to make was there was also a report this week, Joe, that says that first-time buyers now, if you take those sort of prices somewhere around the 250 mark, the average person 18 to 34 saves around £114 a month when they're looking to buy a house and save that deposit. So it's going to take them just over 9 years to save the deposit. And of course, all the time that those prices continue to rise, that gap or that duration gets even longer. So an interesting time in the marketplace, driven by lack of supply, but not great news for first-time buyers.
I think the problem is it's a great subject, Paul, and a subject that is always going to be close to our hearts as first-time buyers, our children, and of course Property Matters itself, because this is what property is all about. This is what property matters. The reality is that it does take a long time for people to save. Prices continue to go up, and I will continue to say that successive governments, at some stage or another, have got to come to the forefront with alternative investment opportunities for people so that they can actually start to focus their money and focus their investment on other products. There is no other product. It is safe as houses. Bricks and mortar is the only one that turns around and gives you that comfort, that feeling of, it's mine, even though 95% or 90% of it, the mortgage may belong to the bank. That 10% and the key in your hand makes somebody feel as if this is my property and I can step inside and I can color it white, pink, purple, or yellow. I can do what I want to because it's my home, and that is something that we can never take away from all of our first-time buyers and British buyers and buyers in general and property investors, because nothing else is better than having your own home. But unless and until such time is other investment opportunities are brought forward that gives people comfort that they don't need to go and deal with a leaky tap. And I've said this before, that there are perhaps people like me now in the Silver Brigade where, long term, not interested in dealing with maintenance and leaky taps and things like that, would probably be quite happy to just say, okay, I've got a certain amount of income that could be giving me a steady flow going forward. But because that doesn't exist, we have no choice. And because we have no choice, we take the choice away from the first-time buyers who actually would like to have the choice to be first on the run of the ladder of the property market. But investors come along and say, well, actually, I've got cash burning a hole in my pocket and I need to go and invest because I'm not getting the right returns. So that balance has got to be addressed. And the minute that balance gets addressed, I think you'll find that, not that I want house prices to tumble or drop, but house prices will certainly start to ease a little bit, and maybe the gap and the time and the opportunity for the first-time buyers will become more readily available, where they can actually turn around and say, well, actually, instead of having to save £114 a month, I could probably do that with £228, double my money, and do it in lesser time, because my competition is now not as intense as it was before. So, it's a long shot, but at some stage, just like we said the broadband over a year ago, somebody will come along and say to us that, you know what, the government's come up with a scheme that's going to give this, that, the other, and we will be the first to stay there and say, well, we told you so. And that's what's going to happen. That's the only thing that's ever going to make that change. Otherwise, I've done this for 40 years of my life. It hasn't changed in the last 40, and I can't see it changing, in the balance of whatever's left, be it 30, 20 or whatever. But the reality is that that's what people feel comfortable. You can stand on the street corner and ask 10 people go past, what is your ideal wish? What is your dream? What would you like? 9 times out of 10, they'll say, I'd like to own my own home one day. I'd like to buy my own place. It's right at the top of the tree.
And the interesting thing is that it doesn't seem as if there's going to be any real slowdown of any significance, because the point being that even though rates will rise in the new year, marginally is going to be the amount that they're going to raised by. So at the end of the day, we're still going to be on very competitive rates. Even if we go up 0.25%, 0.5%, or even a full percent, that's still historically very, very cheap money.
And the reason why they haven't raised the rates, Paul, and we discussed that a couple of 3 weeks ago, I think, of why it wouldn't happen, is because, it would be just sacrilege for the retail industry. They would just look at it and think, what have you done to us? People will just put a break on their strides and say, right, I'm not going to buy that extra thing because now my mortgage has gone up by £100 or £50 or £200, whatever it affects those people. So they've done the right thing. They're going to wait till after Christmas. It's probably going to be less painless by then, because everybody will be licking their wounds and spending their money and so forth, and you'll get through it. But it will come. We know it's been on the cards for ages, and we know that the Bank of England is probably holding back, refraining, but they also know morally at this time of the year it's the wrong thing to do, because this is about the feel-good factor. This is about the families. This is the last 2 years of people suffering and not having, got together with their family and their loved ones, and they don't want to put a nail in the coffin by saying, "Oh, we're just going to add 0.25% of an interest rate." It's insignificant in the grand scheme, but it's the psychological part that gets to them. So I think they will hold back until the new year, but that won't hold back the prices.
No.
And because, as far as I'm concerned, people still value that. But it's important to have their own home, and that's the best investment they ever make.
I think we'll make this our final story this week, Joe. We don't want to give your voice too much of a task this week. This is an interesting piece by a developer called Richie Clapson, and he's talking here about making good money from ugly buildings. And he says there are two basic rules to remember when it comes to understanding how to win good property deals. Avoid as much competition as possible by looking where other developers aren't looking. Know how much profit to make from a property than other people that are looking at it. And there are also three components to every successful property development strategy, and that is profit, risk, and knowing where to look. So if you're assuming a 20% return on a project, and you want to make 100k, let's just say, you'll need a project where the unit will sell for 500,000. Goes without saying, simple maths. Similarly, if you want to make 1 million, your project will have to have a sales value, i.e. a gross development value of around 5 million. So most people will be looking to create a profit from between 100 and 500k on a profit. So they need to, on a project, so they need to work through, the numbers beforehand. You want to try and do it where you're not going to have to do planning permission, for example, do small scale developments where maybe you've got permitted development rights within your capabilities. And lastly, looking where other people aren't looking, so you're not going to get into price competition. But it's an interesting topic, and I thought one that would make an interesting discussion for us. What is wise advice in terms of investing in property to make money?
Yeah, it's a very good story, and the wise words that I can probably offer in this particular story is that first and foremost, location is actually more paramount than having the eye for a deal that is where other people aren't looking. Because going back, and I'll just go back because that's the easiest way for me to go forward, and that is 40 years ago, when I was to do a valuation on a property, it would be based on a lot of factors that would evolve around that particular area. For example, to wind the clock forward 40 years, everybody is an expert on valuation. Why is that? Because you can go to Mr. Google and you can find out what the last property was sold for, what the address was, and how many rooms it was, and how much, you can go on the land registry document and find out what the mortgage payments were. I mean, there's nothing that is hidden anymore. So it made life so much easier to sort of say, yeah, So the reason I say location, location, location is that no matter how good you are at all of these other things, so is everybody else. Everyone else is an expert too. Everyone looks for the properties that you think that nobody else is looking for. I know that because I've been in the game for long enough, and I can tell you the number of people that come and see me and still tell me that they found an area or they found a niche. But the reason why it doesn't work is because it doesn't have the other things, the components that make that deal right, which is location, location, location. And in that location are the basics, the transportation, the communication, so the road, the rail network, the movement, broadband, as we've now talked about, shopping facilities, schooling, all of those things never go away. They might move a little bit further. You might say, okay, well, that's 5 miles away, and my children now don't need to go to that school, so I can afford to move it further. But do the components, the actual basics change? No, they don't. And so I think the wisest thing that I can ever say to anybody is that always look at your pocket, see what you can actually afford, try not to stretch it more and beyond, and try not to look over the garden fence and say, he can do it, so I can do it. The answer is, you don't know that person's circumstances. Do what you feel you can do and take advice and guidance from the people that I know and are in the industry. There are experts at every corner, and you can be Google expert within 30 seconds. And I get that. I get people come in who are way younger than myself, who sit in front of me and tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. And they're probably right. They're probably right. On the basis that they've done their research on Google, and I've done my research with a lot of years behind me. And sooner or later, the truth always comes home to roost, and that is that experience always outweighs the fact that these things are there. So my advice, I mean, this gentleman's done some research, and yes, it's good to try and find the odd thing, and everybody's looking for the odd thing. But the reality is that the basics still matter.
He's saying that a lot of people are looking at office conversions for obvious reasons, and they're a great starting point because obviously the windows are going to be in the right place, and there's usually plenty of parking around there, so you've got a good start there. Retail conversions always turn a few heads as well because there's so many empty units, and this desire for urban living ticks a box there as well. And it's easy to see how the upper floors on retail establishments can be converted into apartments, which has happened in many, many towns around the country already over decades. But the trouble is, it's the offices and shops where most people are looking. So therefore, there's a lot of competition, and therefore a lot of people going to inflate the price potentially in the bidding war that would come as a result of that. So where can you look that's an ugly type of building where there's plentiful supply? And the suggestion is that light industrial is where smart money is looking right now. So what he's saying basically is that somewhere like an old MOT centre or a workshop or a widget manufacturer's or a car repairer's, a printing work, something like that, where it's already built on a secure concrete floor, there's plenty of open plan space. And of course, they're ugly and they're not going to be particularly desirable. But you've got a lot of potential there to turn that into apartments or flats. And quite possibly because of the nature of the building, you're not going to get a lot of competition. So it's an interesting thought.
It is, but also equally, some of those buildings that he talks about are perhaps built in conservation areas or areas of natural beauty. And then you come across the challenge with the planners who don't actually want to change the look and the facade and the likeness of what is existing. And you've got to work within. The conversions is 20 years behind. I mean, 20 years ago, people started converting offices. So there's a lot of things that he's way behind. Now, if he wanted to be really smart and clever, like me, for example, he would probably he'd probably start thinking about whether the new rail networks are going to be linking. The future is there. That's where you need to really look at. So yes, high-speed networks, Crossrail, cross-country networks are connecting areas that were never connected before. And those are the areas that, if you want to put your smart money on, where the growth will happen, communication will happen. And his history has shown it time and time again, wherever the railroad has become a positive, and around that railroad, around that whole conurbation, starts a new life, a new homes. I can go back to a couple of things like new towns. Back in the 70s, Paul, you may remember, you're probably a bit younger than I am, so, but
If only.
the new towns were created. Places like Basildon and Milton Keynes and Bracknell, Basingstoke. There's another one that goes out of my head, but it'll come to me in a minute. There were 5 new towns were created just out of, and we called them the roundabout world, because basically they were the only towns that you knew that had 1 million roundabouts. Everything had a roundabout about it. But new life was created there. New families, new people, new generations, new links. And so similarly, I think if you look, sort of much closer to home and see things like the rail network that the governments have been pushing through to try and keep the levelling of the north and the south, for argument's sake, together, all of those things important. And you'll find that there'll be life around rail networks that will start to manifest itself and generate, and those opportunities may strike there. I think this thing about office conversion and retail conversion and so forth is pretty much done.
And I think we're pretty much done for today. How are you feeling?
Drained, to be honest with you.
I bet you are.
I think I've surprised myself, I have to say.
Yeah, you've done incredibly well, and you've sung for your supper, and we won't make you suffer anymore. You need to go and rest so you're ready for next week's Property Matters, which will happen again Sunday, 10 o'clock next week. Thanks for watching.